Okay, we're going to call our special Board of Education meeting to order on January 5th, 2022 at 8:04, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Second item is approval of the agenda. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, John is making a motion to approve, and second is? Who seconded? Jason seconded. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. We are going to open up our meeting now to public comment. And I thank all those people who were able, the few that showed up at the public hearing. We got some good feedback, and I'm hoping that they're also on now to hear the rest of the feedback. So I believe, Ken, that they have a phone number they can call in or a webinar that they can access in order to be heard. I'd like you to please state your name clearly, first and last, and also what town you're from.
Yes, all of the call-in information is on the district website and in the YouTube, excuse me, description of the live stream. We do currently have 7 people that have called in. Only 1 is raising their hand currently. Those calling in, please dial *9. That will raise your hand, indicate you wish to speak. And I will call out the last 4 digits of the phone number. The first caller is going to be 0394. You need to dial *6 to unmute yourself.
Good evening. This is Jim Irish from Middlefield. I'm looking at your Zoom meeting. I don't see Kim on the Zoom. My question is actually for her, or perhaps another can answer. There was questions at the public hearing about the cost of the $7.5 million as it relates to the debt service and spread out over years. And I'm wondering if Kim or someone could show a slide that explains how the debt service on that $7.5 million bond would impact the budget in terms of percent over the next 5 years. Lucy, you mentioned that the debt service from other things is actually going down. And I think the debt service from this particular bond might actually be very affordable given that. So I'm wondering if it's possible to get an explanation of what that impact on the debt service over the next multiple years would be on the budget.
Okay, Jim, Kim is on.
Kim, you're broken up.
I don't have a slide prepared to show you, but the 7.5 million, it would be about a 0.75% increase in a $37 million budget. 100 and I don't have the number in front of me. I think it was 279,000. And then over the next 24-25, that year, we will be retiring some significant bonds. And that will reduce the debt service by 1% of a $37 million budget, which results in about $386,000 decrease. So if you offset, the debt service will be going down. Now you will not realize that. However, if you bond in the 22-23 school year, you have a year to make your first principal payment. So that wouldn't hit the debt service until 23-24, and then you're looking to have your first reduction of the bond retirement in 25-26. So you'd have 23-24 and 24-25 of the inflated bond amount of roughly the 279. It's not a flat amount every year, but you can kind of go with that as an estimate. You hit the 25-26 year, you're down the 386, and now your debt service is down. That does include the 6.9 million that was authorized back in 2019. So that number is accounted for in there, even though we have not fully bonded that yet. But also that does not include any other bonding that may be done at other schools. So, while we're addressing these John Lyman and Brewster, a lot of things at Memorial, we also have items at Coggins and Strong that are going to be nearing their useful life, the end of their useful life. At that point, we will save funds through our capital reserve, but we're limited to the 2%. And we're kind of have other, projects that still need to be done. So there's a potential that there could be another bond issue or a referendum to the taxpayers within the next, maybe 5 years to address those needs.
Jim, did you have any other questions?
He hung up after asking his question.
Oh, okay. All right. So then he's probably all set.
I'll move on to the next caller. There's only one more that has their hand raised.
Okay.
Please remember, if you do wish to ask a question, you need to dial *9 to indicate that. Right now, we're going to acknowledge caller. That's phone number ends in 8690.
This is Carol Kleeman from Durham. Thank you for taking our questions. I have a couple for the board. The first one is, where and when was the RFP posted for this project? Can you give me an answer on that before I go on?
This is Kim Hibbing, Director of Finance. There is no RFP yet.
No.
That would only be at the point at which construction would be, the referendum would be approved. We did not have an RFP for an architect to study this because we were under our budget bid threshold. So we did not need to go out to bid for that. And also it's a longstanding firm that we've worked with that is very familiar with the district. So the cost would have been less than if we brought somebody in that wasn't as familiar. They've studied all our buildings in the past. So we're not at an RFP point for construction until this is approved. And then all that work does go out to bid at that point.
Okay, well, I have to rebuttal that because when you're doing a major project like this, there should be an RFP, and that should go out to multiple companies, because just because you use this company for years doesn't mean that they're the best, nor that they are going to give us the best price. So I would suggest that the school board go back out and put an RFP out there and get more people with opinions and price.
So thank you for that suggestion. The architect's really just giving us the price of what the work would be done. So another firm would come in and really kind of use the same calculations to get us to the price of fixing the building. So in terms of what architect we use, I'm not sure that would matter. And then once the work goes out to bid, it could come in under bid, under what the estimates are. So once it goes out to actually become a contract, it could come in over or it could come in under.
Okay, well, I'm addressing this to the school board, and I wholeheartedly disagree because I've worked with bids before, and this is the wrong way of going about it. This is the opinion of that one company. You need to put out an RFP to see what everyone's going to say within your specifications, and you are not doing that. So I would suggest that the board re-look at this and redo it. Which brings me, was my second question. Then the third one is, now that you have decided that you're going to spend $7 million above what the state would reimburse us, there was talk about going, having work done at Brewster School. What I want the board to be totally transparent tonight and tell us, what are your plans with Brewster School as far as expansions, costs, timeline?
First of all, we have not made the determination to go to $7.5 million bonding. We have just put that out in order to cover all possible contingencies after we received feedback from the public. As far as bonding for Brewster, we already do have some bonding. Kim, you might want to chime in here a little bit. I don't believe we are considering any additions to Brewster as long as John Lyman is staying open. Although there might be some other things, I believe perhaps the septic system and all that still have not been addressed. Am I correct, Kim?
So there are some items that we did bond for in the 6.9 million. That is for Brewster. The reason that they have not been completed yet is because the status of the Brewster building has been unknown. Whether there was going to be construction, whether there was going to be an addition or not. So it doesn't make construction sense to build onto a building to have to redo or if you put in a new boiler and it's not big enough to handle an addition. So we were waiting for the disposition to be determined. Now, I can't answer, that's a better question for the board, is what is the plan going forward? Is there a plan to build onto Brewster? That stuff needs to be determined still. But if we're asking about the needs of the Brewster's end-of-life systems, we did address those in the 6.9 million bonding. So we will not be going back out for that kind of stuff. If there were some construction to be done at Brewster in terms of an addition, which was only really being considered if Lyman closed. So that would be another discussion. I do want to correct one statement too that you said, was that it was a 7.5 million that more than what the state was going to reimburse us, and that is not true. The 7.5 million is the top amount, and then from there you deduct what the state will reimburse us for contracts. So it won't go over the 7.5. It'll actually come in under.
Okay, so here's the next question. Because of COVID, and there's a lot going on within the two towns as far as whether they even want the school or not. For phase one, you said maybe $250,000. What will I wasn't at the other meeting. So will that fix the boiler? Or what was that $250,000 for?
Okay.
Without doing the whole renovation at this time.
It was actually approximately $284,000, and it is going to be addressing some high priority items. I'm just looking through now we're looking at doors, coding issues. I'm not sure if the boilers are right in part one or if they're in part two.
Oh, Lucy, I can speak to that. The boilers
Yeah,
are
I
in
have to go
part
through
two.
them.
Part one is actually things that affect safety, immediate safety. So those are the things that need to be addressed as soon as possible. In priority two, there are the end of life systems such as the boilers and whatnot that, while they're not a life safety issue, they're a priority. So Silver Petroselli really put priority one at things that were actually a safety risk. An end-of-life boiler is not a safety risk. However, it is important to get completed. And if it were to fail, we just may not be able to open school the next day. So we consider the board, myself, and the superintendent consider priority one and priority two to kind of be the same level for the needs of the school right away.
So who wouldn't it be the board who decides what the safety issues are, or what priority one and priority two is? Or is there something that's mandated?
No, we wouldn't make those determinations. That has to be done on a professional level to let us know, because we don't get into all of these individual pieces that are part of a school building. We can certainly look at what is being proposed in the project analysis and perhaps make some ideas as to what things, we might want to put off. But I think once we start doing that, we start nickel and diming. And sometimes that doesn't become cost effective. The other piece I just want to add, and which I should have mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, is we would like to keep this at an approximately 3-minute speaking time, because we do have a number of other people who would like to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to speak. You can
Okay, so I
certainly
just
come
want to
back.
make one more comment, and that is, my point is that it's an opinion of what this company wants, and it needs to go to an RFP. So I would ask the Board of Education as a whole to consider putting this out as an RFP and not going by someone who they've worked with for many, many years, and not looking at other companies that are out there that might be able to do the same job or maybe even better. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, before you go to the next person, we are going to try to stick pretty strictly to a 3-minute rule. Missy, are you all set to time? Good. And we would ask that you please respect that so that we can have as many people as possible share their thoughts. You can always come back after everyone has shared in order to finish up something you may have started. Thank you.
Okay, the next caller, phone number ends in 7471.
Hello, my name is Caitlin D'Amato, a parent in Middlefield. Just a quick question. What is an RFP?
An
Can you hear me?
RFP is a request for proposal. So it's typically sent out when you have any kind of job that you need to be completed. And what you do is you'd send out your specifications, and then you have multiple companies that would respond to that and bid with their fees. So in the terms of the architect, you'd send that out and say, these are my needs. I need a school studied. I need the capital studied of this school. And then multiple architectural firms would then submit a bid saying how much they would charge for those services. They could all have different opinions potentially as to what would be life safety or what would be priority 2. Maybe they would classify a couple of different things a little differently. But I think, at the end of the day, you can't argue a boiler that's past its useful life. It simply needs to be replaced. The architects are not, when they give you an estimate, that's not actually what they're charging for that job for the boiler. The boiler will be charged what is the going rate at the time you do it. And that's bid out through an RFP through multiple vendors. So you will get multiple companies who can replace that boiler based on your specifications. And they may actually come in at different prices based on their labor. But that's not until the project is approved and then sent out to bid. So we're still before that phase. So an RFP now would be for just an architectural firm to study.
Okay, and when was the last time your group did a study of John Lyman?
I think John Lyman was studied back in 2000. Oh gosh, 2008, maybe it was after that. I don't have my paperwork with me. I apologize. But the last round that was studied through Silver Petrocelli, all the schools except for John Lyman were studied for capital needs, because the thought at that time, even which predates my tenure in the district, was that the school was going to be closed. So we didn't want to spend the money on a study on that. So the last study I have was from, gosh, I apologize. It could be 2014, 2015, somewhere in that area.
And the
Kim,
$7.5 million does include like the how everything has gone up in price since then?
Yes.
Okay, and then
Yes, the current,
another,
I think Michelle
where
wanted to
would
say
the John,
something.
oh, sorry.
Excuse me. I think Michelle wanted to say something about the,
Yeah. The
study.
previous study for John Lyman was in 2013. We just studied this just last month, so these numbers are as current as we can make them.
Okay,
And just to
thank
kind
you.
of touch back on that RFP part too, these are just planning numbers. You will go out for an architect again, an engineer to design these systems and these pieces. And then those drawings and specifications will go out where contractors will bid them. So these are really just planning numbers. You will have full designs that go out to contractors after, just to clarify.
Okay. And sorry, just one more question. And then I was on the last meeting, it kept everyone kept referring to, or Miss Lucy, I'm sorry, kept saying John Lyman School. Is it going to stay as John Lyman Elementary School, K through 4 school, or what is, can we confirm that it'll stay a K-4 school?
Yeah, we have not determined that at this time. That's,
Would that go into would that have a different price value on what would happen? Because then would you need to go buy new desks if you have other grade levels at that school, or would the budget be different based on grade levels?
from what I can see, the repairs that need to be made are things that just need to be made to the building and the infrastructure and the grounds. And it doesn't matter what grade level is in the school. If we were retrofitting it to a lower grade level than was traditionally in there, then that could be an issue. But at this time, I don't believe that there would be any changes, whether it was a K1, K2, or K4.
Can you inform me if oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I stopped my timer at 4 minutes. I feel like this is hard to time because her question's not taking 3 minutes, but the explanation might take longer than that. So I'm not sure exactly what I'm timing.
Okay, so I can come back to that question.
Thank you. Ken?
There's one other person with their hand raised. The last 4 digits are 4744. Caller, you can go ahead.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now? Hello?
Yep, we can. Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. What was the fee for Silverman or Silver and Petrocelli to do this study and put together this plan?
This is Kim
Can you
Newbecker.
state your name for the
It was
record,
around
please?
$12,000.
My name is Donna Reed and I'm in Durham. Is about $12,000. I guess I'm, and one other question. You indicated that they're very familiar with our buildings. How long have they been doing work for the town of Durham? Any idea?
I
Michelle,
think
can you
about
speak to
6
that?
years. Yep. About 6 years.
About 6 years. And will you get, just quickly, another quote from different architect when this plan goes forward?
I believe that
Another
would be
opinion?
Kim, I believe you guys would. I don't think, usually wouldn't just pass this off. This would go out for an RFP
Yes.
at that point.
Yes, we would, because at that point, we would probably be at our bidding threshold where we're required by statute and town charter or RSD13 charter to go out to bid.
For the architect?
Correct.
Would you go out to bid for the architect as well as the different trades?
Yes, the architect to do the plans and the engineer work, and then also the contractors to actually perform the construction.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we don't have anyone new raising their hand, but we do have a repeat.
Okay,
Okay. 8690, you're on.
Yes, it's Carol Kleeman again from Durham. Just verification. The study that you're going off of, if I heard correct, is from 2013. Is that correct?
no,
Someone
that
had
The
asked-
2013 study was the last time John Lyman was studied by an architectural firm for capital needs. And so the 2013 was the most recent we had. So then we had Silver Petroselli just within the last month do another study. And that's what the $12,000 was for, because the study that we had went back to 2013. So we needed to update the numbers in order to go out for a referendum for bonding.
So this board right now, none of you that are on the board is familiar with this company from the last 2013 study. Is that correct? Am I correct?
No, that is not correct.
No.
I have been on this board for 6 years, and I am very familiar with Silver Petroselli. When we had this
Okay,
discussion.
who's speaking? I can't see, I don't know who's speaking.
No, I'm the chairman, Mrs. Petrella, Lucy Petrella.
Oh, I'm sorry, your mouth isn't going on the, I'm sorry, Lucy. I couldn't tell from the Zoom link here. It's not showing who's speaking.
Okay, I believe
okay.
Bob Moore was also part of, is familiar. I believe Missy as well. We've actually had
Okay.
several dealings with Silver Petroselli, also with regard to demographics and student population growth or decline. And almost every year for a number of years, we've had them go back and revisit their figures in order to make sure that we were in the right place. If I have the right.
Okay, I think since the last one really was done in 2013 and no one else, it's just another reason to go out and get other companies, even for the architecture, and not just use one company. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Bob Moore. So
Hi,
this is just a list of all the equipment that needs to be replaced. It's not a design of it. It's not a, the drawings. It's a list of all the pieces of equipment, their age and their lifespan, and what's needed, what the ADA requirements are missing, and what has passed its useful life. So it's a list of equipment that needs to be replaced and repaired. It's not a design of any of the stuff.
Can't understand them.
said they'll all pull the RFPs, and she works for Silver Petroselli.
Was the study done by Silver Petroselli? I thought it was done by DRA. The 2014
You're
study?
correct. We did not study that one.
The 2013 study was done by DRA, and then Silver Petroselli came in to study all schools except for Lyman. Michelle, I want to think that was in 2017. So Silver Petroselli did not do the 2013 study, and it's important to note that the things that Silver Petroselli identified with this most recent round of study was very in line with the DRA study. So one could say that maybe different architects would have different opinions, but those two really aligned nicely because, like I said, an end-of-life boiler is an end-of-life boiler. So there's really no ambiguity there. So, DRA studied the entire district in 2013. Then Silver Petroselli came in, I want to say 2017. It studied
2016.
16, thank you. Studied all schools except for John Lyman because the thought was that John Lyman could be closed. So now when we were at the point of John Lyman not being closed, we needed to update those 2013 numbers from DRA, and Silver Petroselli did that just in the last month. I hope that kind of clarified the timeline.
Lucy, if I may,
Yes.
I've got people that have been calling as well. And I think that's the confusion here more than anything else is the fact that the 2013 study, I mean, I'd be interested to know too, as a new board member as well, that with the 2013 study, what were on those as priorities that weren't done? And now that the school is not closing, obviously we haven't spent money on that school because we thought it would, hence why we're in this predicament. Were a lot of those things identified then? And if they were, why weren't they dealt with?
As Kim said, go ahead, Kim.
A lot of things, yes, you're right. A lot of things were on the list. That was also, a number of years ago. So things have certainly become end of life since that study in 13. But yeah, a lot of the things were on the list then are on the list now. Why weren't they done? I'd say a couple different reasons. There wasn't funding saved to do that, so would have had to gone out to a bonding referendum. But I think, and I can only guess because that was before me, but I think another big piece of it was that the idea to potentially close Lyman had come to the forefront, and it's taken many, many years to get to where we are tonight. And the thought of spending a lot of money on fixing something that could potentially be closed. And of course, it was always thinking it'll close next year, in 2 years. And it's just been a drawn out process. So it's gone a lot longer, I think, than anyone could have imagined at the time.
I appreciate that. But we're talking about 2013. And again, just speaking as a new board member, we're talking about 2013. I just want everyone to know this, that if these were issues in 2013, whether or not the public or the constituents of our cities, or both towns, I should say, haven't been, I don't want to use the word educated on what the costs and what was entailed in all of this. I would be interested myself as well to know what was identified by DRA back then that is part of our priority 1s and 2s now that haven't been, and we're talking 9 years ago. We're not talking about 2-3 years ago. We're talking 9 years ago. We're talking a while. Why these haven't been addressed. And again, I'm getting a lot of individuals that are calling me about this because, again, they were, and just to be correct, I'm not blaming anyone, but people just don't know what was priority. But I really don't think they understand that if we do keep that school open now, that we do have to make that school safe and make sure that it does open the next day. God forbid something happens with a boiler or an expensive piece of equipment there, that we should have never probably said, well, it's just going to close and well, that's it. Well, I don't know if that was probably the right way of doing it. And now people are questioning $7.5 million. And I got to be honest with you, I don't blame them.
John, I can say that when I had done the FAQs, when we worked on the FAQs for closing Lyman,
Yep.
the immediate need of the 4.2 million for capital, and I think it was a 6.75 I'd estimated as a total need. Those were based off the DRA numbers because that was the most recent study that I had. So then when we had Silver Petrocelli do their most recent study just in the last month, they came in at the 6.6 million. And so, it really is, it confirmed for me that the numbers that I had been given the public and the taxpayers on the FAQ, even though they were old numbers, were still pretty accurate. So, that kind of made me feel as though that what was on the DRA study and what was on Silver Petrocelli study were pretty much the same items. I can't speak to why things weren't done, but I can tell you that, and I have this study. I'd be happy to put it on the website for people to look at. And then you can, make your own, connections.
I think that's important. But again, I'm not placing blame. All I'm basically stating is that I think this is why that this is going to be contentious, is because it's been discussed through referendum that we wanted to close this school. And obviously the referendum didn't go through the way everyone anticipated. And if we knew about things from 2013 and we haven't been keeping those up to date, from what you're telling me, that number would not have changed significantly because we'd probably been saving by not spending that money, if I'm hearing you correctly. I get it, but we're still spending money on a school now that a lot of people, at least Durham, on Durham end, wanted to have closed. So now we're going to be spending money. And if I'm just putting out there, if people don't pass out or don't pass this referendum to spend this money on this, then what do we do?
Are we still on public comment?
My question as well.
because I feel like we've moved on and it's okay, but if we have, then we need to follow the agenda.
And do we have anyone else?
We do have a new person with their hand raised.
Okay,
Last four are 2849. Please state your name and town.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Tomer from Durham, and I wasn't able to attend the other meeting, so I apologize if this was answered. But if this all passes, when would this construction start?
I believe the construction, Kim, as you mentioned before, would probably take about a year by the time we get all the everything settled out there, all the RFPs put out, and get the construction started. Am I correct?
Yeah, I
Approximately
think
within-
what Silver Petroselli says is a year for planning and a year for construction.
Okay. So
So
we'll take
then
about a
my
year.
next, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So my next question would be, where would John Lyman kids go during this construction if it's something that they cannot be in the building for? And are there things that they can't be in the building for?
Yeah, I don't believe that that would be an issue, because generally when construction is done on a building, a school building that's active, it's designed and scheduled in such a way so as to minimize any interruption and to not have to move the students to another place. That's been my experience in other school districts, and that would probably be the same here as well. We wouldn't need to send the kids elsewhere. Am I correct?
That is
Yeah,
true,
I-
Lucy. Because
Yeah.
of the nature of the work, it's not a renovate as new. So it's not like the building would be pretty much knocked down.
Right.
So the work could be planned for breaks, but also a lot of the work would be in boiler rooms and roofs and areas where students aren't anyways. But contractors will also work night shifts when they need to and during breaks to get it done so it doesn't impact the students' education.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ken, do we have anyone else?
No one else has their hand raised.
Okay, we'll just wait a couple minutes just to make sure.
A hand went up. It's a repeat. 7471. Please state your name and town. Caller, you're live. Caller with the phone number that ends in 7471. You are live to talk. They seem to be unmuting and muting themselves. Do we want to give them a few more minutes, or there's nobody else with the hand raised?
Yeah, let's just wait a few seconds, because if we were in the auditorium, we would be waiting for people to come forward. Perhaps while we're waiting, I did have an email that was sent to me by Janet Morganti from Durham. And I'll just read it to you as though she were here. She says, I don't believe it is it's fiscally responsible to go forward with $7.5 million in renovations on a school that was on the brink of closing. I recently read about 2 studies on declining enrollment that were conducted by the Board of Ed in 2012 and 2014, in which both predicted that enrollment in RSD13 would be down 55% by 2024. She wanted her voice to be heard. She says, I'm usually in support of plans to enhance and improve our educational system, but I can't support this huge expense right now. If there are serious issues that need to be addressed, I think they need to be prioritized by urgency. Do enough to make the school functional and safe for the next few years, then reassess the enrollment situation. Thank you. Do we still not have a caller yet?
It shows that they are unmuted. I don't know if they're having issues on their end. They do have an open channel to talk. The phone number that ends in
Hello.
771.
Hello, this is Caitlin Brady. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, sorry, it's Caitlin Brady from Middlefield again. Sorry about that unmuting. My next question is, what is the approximate proposed impact per taxpayer per year?
Okay. If we went with the $7.5 million bonding, if that went forward and passed, it would be approximately $279,000 per year for the debt service, which is, I believe, Kim, you said 0.75% of a $37 million budget.
Yes, that's correct. And then also what would mean to the taxpayers is each town's individual allocation. So 64.5% of that is for Durham taxpayers and the 35.5 is for Middlefield taxpayers. I can't get to the granular level of what each taxpayer would be facing for an increase without speaking to the towns because they have their own budgets and their own things that, will weigh into that. So, I mean, certainly I could figure out in conjunction with the finance directors of the towns what just this piece of the bonding would equate to for taxpayers. But that wouldn't mean that was the whole, in case, each town had their own increases separate from that.
Right.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to say, Mr. John, I totally agree with you with looking into why nothing's been done since 2013 or 14. Thank you for your time. And I hope that we continue to, or for my last words, I hope that you keep John Lyman as an elementary school K through 4. It's very important, I think, to the town and to the students to have a longer period of time in one place and transitioning them every few years.
Thank you. Anyone else, Ken?
We have some people listening, but no one has indicated that they wish to speak. A reminder to dial *9 if you want to raise your hand, callers.
Okay, I think
We have a new hand that just went up.
okay.
The phone number ends in 1362. Caller, please state your name and town.
Hi, this is Susan Michael. I'm calling because I've been a parent in the district for a long time, as well as a teacher. But one of the things I'm curious about is the portables that are on each of the buildings. Because I remember when they were put on to deal with the surge of students that we had in my son's class graduating in 2010, and they were, we were told that they were temporary, and we should be taking them offline and moving what's in them into buildings if there's that much room. I think the public should also be thinking about the fact that if they keep Lyman open, you're not having to do some of the things you were going to propose for Brewster and Memorial to absorb the population of students and instructors that needed to be shifted from Lyman. So you're saving some places where you're shifting others. but we have to look at the future and what's best for these kids and the building. And we also should be looking at energy savings and being as environmentally sustainable as we can when we're looking at these plans. I don't envy you guys, your situation, but I really, really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I'm really curious what our enrollment is now compared to, like, how many years back would you have to go to see enrollments that are equal to what we have now? Like, was it the mid 80s? Was it the 70s? Have we never had enrollments that are equal to now? Is there data somewhere where we can see that? I'm just curious. I'm done.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that data exists. I do not have access to that at this point. We possibly could go back and look at records and find out what our enrollment was. That was pretty much on par with what we have today in terms of number of students.
The reason why I say that is because if you, let's say 1988 was the last time we had the same enrollment. Well, we had Lyman open, we had Memorial open, we had Brewster open, we had the high school open, we had Strong, and we had Corn, and we've already closed Corn. So I think some of the public needs, we just need more information to put some perspective on these numbers. And what are we using space for today that didn't exist in the 80s? Like, we need tech rooms at each of the buildings for teaching computer skills and things like that. Now I'm really done.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Okay. Ken?
We still have people listening in, but there are no hands currently raised.
Okay, I'll ask you to interrupt, Ken, if someone does raise their hand, because I want to make sure that as many people as possible have an opportunity to speak while they have this chance. I would like to go back to what John was asking.
Lucy, we need to stay with the agenda. So,
well, it's
we need to, but we're not on public comment anymore. So we can talk about this, I think,
okay,
under number 5. But,
okay, I got it. Okay, so then let's go to item number 4. Just as a reminder, our next board meeting is January 12th at 7 p.m. And now we're going to item number 5. And I believe what we need to do is, I believe we make this as a motion first and then have a discussion, and then whatever amendments are made to this motion will then proceed after the discussion. Am I correct, Doug? Okay, so we need a motion for item number 5 for a resolution to appropriate $7.5 million for renovations and improvements to John Lyman Elementary School, and to authorize the issuance of bonds, notes, or temporary notes in an amount not to exceed $7.5 million to finance the appropriation.
so moved.
And that was moved by, I didn't catch it.
Missy.
And second?
A second.
Okay, second by Maura. Any discussion? Now we can go to John's comments.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
this maybe I should have waited to hear. I apologize, but I was just answering.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm just answering a question that, obviously is being, everyone's kind of articulating with the public comments. And I just thought it'd be a good idea for Kim to, ask her the questions on what, basically what I asked. And again, this $7.5 million is not going to sit well with people because, like I said, they believe that school should be closed. And now that you also put out there that 64% of this is going to be Durham's responsibility and only 35% of it is Middlefield's, I understand the demographic between, the populations between the two. But again, the taxpayer is it's going to be a tough sell. I'm just going to put it out there.
Mhm. I just wanted to clarify something. It almost sounds like we didn't do anything to the school since 2013, and that's not the case, because if that were the case, it wouldn't be in the condition that it's in. Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, but I believe I remember a number of years ago having a retreat at Lyman, at Powder Ridge, and we were talking about the restructuring and possibly closing of schools. And that, I believe, when I was first on the board, which would have been 6 years ago, I think this was already on the table to be discussed. So it's not like this discussion just came up a few years ago. And that's probably why some of the large, pardon? Oh, some of the larger items were not addressed at that time, because I believe from way back then, one of the determinations, we had several different options. We were talking about 7 different grade level configurations. And I believe even at that time, we were already thinking that Lyman would be closed. So perhaps some of this is just my thinking, my recollection. Bob, I'm not sure what your recollection would be. Sure. Unfortunately, a lot of time has passed since then. And had we not had COVID, we would have been discussing this 2 years ago. So there's been a lot of delays outside of our control with the idea that perhaps Lyman would be closed, that have come into play in terms of how much money and what improvements we would be making at the school. In the meantime, it has been kept up as much as possible. Bob?
Yeah, several years ago, we had done a whole look at where we should go with those schools.
Hey, Bob, you're kind of chopping up a little bit. Bob, you're chopping up a little bit.
Yeah, my internet out here is tough. So can you hear me now?
Yes, if you stay in one spot, we'll probably be okay.
All right. We had a discussion of in a plan of all the renovations of all the schools, and to look at whether or not we should have 2 K5s or in a middle school and a high school.
Yep.
That ended up with the most cost-effective would be a single K5, but was like $30,000 or $40 million, and we decided that was not going to happen. We then looked at a variety of options, and the option that came back was to have included closing Lyman. And if you remember, we had a motion made at a board meeting around 2016 to close Lyman, which ended up with about 300 people coming to a board meeting to object to them. Missy was the leader of that at the time. And that, from then on, we began to look at it, and the motion was made to close it. We then overturned that motion later on to keep it open, and began looking at a long-term study of our needs for keeping the schools open. And that ended up in around 2018 with a proposal to go to a single program, and in January of 19 to close Lyman. We went to look at how we were going to close Lyman, and we needed some improvements at Brewster and Memorial to get rid of a few other things at Memorial and to make more room at Brewster. And that needed to go to bonding. When our bond council saw that, when we were going to a referendum in the fall of 2019, he indicated that we had to have a plan amendment, and that's when we had to revise the regional plan. And that regional plan amendment then was defeated in January of 20. Then when COVID hit, and we didn't pursue it any further at that time, and then brought it back specifically this spring, and had the discussions. We had a lot of workshops. We had a lot of discussion on closing Lyman, And that ended up in the referendum to amend the regionalization plan to allow a specific item of closing Lyman School. In the meantime, we have maintained the school and all of the equipment there to keep the school open, to keep this stuff working whenever there was anything broken. We did close one or two of the temporary buildings there because of they're too old and they were rotting, and they've been one of them has been shut down. I think the other one is too risky, and so that's kind of where we are with this. But the facilities have been maintained. We just didn't put the capital investment into the long-term control needs that we're addressing now. It was clear that if we're going to keep the school open, we can no longer wait for these things to happen.
Right.
So to sum up what Bob was just saying too, in response to John's comment too, and the people who are getting in touch with him, to sum up what you're saying, Bob, is I've been on for a while myself, and I know that this was well into the makings when I joined the Board of Ed. So this, unless you've just recently joined conversations with the Board of Ed, no one should be surprised of the plan or unsure why money was not being put into the building for major renovations when it's been a plan for a while to close and to join the two schools.
And also, I'll just say, just even before I joined the board, you know, the goal of the board is, and what the, you know, the people want is to keep, you know, a zero increase in the budget. So, you know, if these things were put on the table and they were part of the budget, anytime we wanted to decrease the budget, the first thing to get pulled would be capital needs for Lyman, because that's, you know, not going to stay open. So why would we put money towards that? And then, as Kim has said, we can only put a certain percentage of the budget away for unplanned capital needs, unless it's actually a line item in the budget specifically to one thing. I think it's only 2% of the total budget can we save towards these things.
It's 2% now. I think it was less before. And since I've been on the board for 6 years, my understanding is that we have maximized the amount we can put in there. We put in the maximum amount that we could put in for capital improvements. And it was, prior to this, was less than 2%. And I believe it's just recently it's gone up to 2% of the entire budget. That's the maximum we could put in for. And we have 5 buildings that have to have work done. Just moving on with the discussion. The resolution before us is a $7.5 million appropriation for renovations. Let's kind of focus on that and see what we think we might want to do going forward, based on some of the comments we heard. Do we want to go forward with this? Do we want to modify it? Do we want to, I'm not sure if we want to go through the facility conditions and pick and choose, which, you know, I believe that's why you had a company that prioritized items.
I think at the bare minimum, we need to cover level 1 and level 2. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts?
I agree with Missy. That's what I had originally said a couple of meetings ago too. I feel like 1 and 2, we've already been told are pretty much health safety. So I do believe that 1 and 2 are our top priority.
I too would like to see us reduce it to 1 and 2s. And also, just like Bob's opinion on what he would do. I know he had concerns that he didn't want to go through with doing this. So I want to know what his opinion would be too.
I'm not sure who would have the answer to this question, but of the priority 1 and 2s, how many of those projects overlap with potentially a 3 that if we didn't do it, it might disrupt the same area or whatever? Would it be counterproductive to not do them? I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this.
That I think I would defer to Michelle perhaps to answer, because I couldn't begin to tell you with the construction what would overlap.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through now to see what 2s would affect some of these 3s. I don't think, looking at one right now just caught me off guard is like caulk at the windows. That one you actually wouldn't even, you can almost wipe that out if you're going to do the new windows, that would be included with that price. So there is some savings. Some things will actually start to go away. A few things like that. But
Is
otherwise,
the
I
new
don't.
windows under which?
I think new windows are under 2. Let me. It's under exterior. No, that is a 3. I'm sorry. I mean, I personally wish I put a 2 there. Not gonna lie. Those windows, most of them are 1966. Like they should be done. That's my personal opinion. We kind of just kept
covered under any energy saving.
That one you can get reimbursed for. That is a
Yeah.
state project. It'd be called an energy conservation project. Windows and doors would fall under that. Your roof would be reimbursed. And then again, a lot of these 2s, especially in the architectural, because they're code ADA stuff, those would also be reimbursed. It's when you get into the mechanical and the plumbing, they're not gonna reimburse you for just replace. I mean, they would for the bathrooms if it's all ADA reasons, but they're not gonna they're not gonna give you money for replacing the boiler, something like that. So there is a lot of state funding I think you're gonna get in the 1s and 2s.
The total amount for phases 1 and 2, if that's what we decided to go with, is $4,795,500 based on the figures that I have from the report, unless they've changed. I'll say approximately. And then we generally add 15% to that, which I haven't done yet, which would then set that particular bond amount. So if someone could figure the $4,795,500 times 15%.
Lucy, you're looking at about 5.5 million for that.
Okay. $5.5. So that's what we could set the bond at, 5.5. Is that correct, Kim?
Yes, that's correct. That includes the 1 and 2 plus a 15% markup on cost increase and contingencies.
Okay, now knowing that if we put out if we decided on the 5.5, we'd be covering items 1 and 2, which are the more critical items. And also that there probably will be some reimbursement for that. So we probably wouldn't even be spending the full 5.5 million. But so that would be like the upper, that's topmost maximum. How does that set, knowing with what we heard from the community?
Well, again, I don't know if I get an answer for what 3s or potentially even 4s would be affected by 1s and 2s. Because if we're going to be, just for the sake of argument, let's just say we're going to be doing renovations to the boiler room. But while we were in there, there was an HVAC thing that was on here or something like that.
Right.
Would it be smart to do it all at once so it doesn't disrupt? I mean, I'm trying to limit the amount of disruption and going back into the same area of doing something again. I think we need to have that answer.
I'm sure we could go through that. We'd probably have Silver Petroselli go through that and make those combinations.
Well, just looking at the mechanical list right now, there's only 2 items that are number 3s. Everything else is a 1 and 2, and the 2 3s are a total of $7,000. So I think you could probably do that all under this, So I don't think there's that type of issue, but nothing else is sticking out at me that says, if you do 1s and 2s, you should do this 3 or that. I don't think anything's affected like that, just by quick look. And I don't know, all the electrical and mechanical pieces by heart,
Right. I appreciate
so
that, Michelle. I mean, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
No, I got you.
I'm just trying to limit the amount of,
Right.
disruption, I guess, more than anything else. But I mean, why go into the same area and do construction in an area where we could be doing it all at once in there, even though I don't want to spend the money, but it is what it is.
I got you.
Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt. I just want to caution the board on one thing that I would have to research, and I won't be able to finalize it tonight, is if you amend the appropriation and bond authorization, right? You've warned a special district meeting, you had a public hearing on that. Do you run the risk of voters and taxpayers saying, hold up, that's not what the warning said? I know for a fact we could never let you increase the amount, right?
Right.
The question is, can you decrease it? And I can't say I've ever seen that. The statute sort of says you have the public hearing and then you set the date of the referendum. It's not quite the same as a town meeting for those of you who have been to town meetings at the municipal level. So I'm agnostic as to what you do, I assure you, but I would have to research tomorrow. And the worst case scenario would be that if you do amend it downward, you'd have to redo the district meeting and resend it to referendum. You'd have to go through this process again. I'm not saying that would be the result, but I would want to research that tomorrow. Okay.
I believe we use the term not to exceed 7.5 million. Doesn't that cover it, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, you are setting the upper limit to 7.5, but for somebody who wants 7.5, right, who doesn't want to see a not to exceed a 4.5, you theoretically are reducing the project in the scope by $3 million. And they may say, that's not what you warned in the newspaper. It's not what I testified on. That's a very different project. So that would be the concern. You don't have to spend 7.5, that's for sure. But if you're going to change what you're asking the voters, I'd have to research that. Does that make sense?
And it does say to the resolution to appropriate the 7.5.
I think too, what Jamie was saying was, I do recall our last meeting, we were saying that we didn't want to exceed the number because we wanted to hear what the community was saying first before we agreed upon a set number.
Yeah, and I think that would, and if you have that feedback and you want to change it, right, well, that's what we would look at tomorrow and say, okay, should this be what you go back to the voters and say, we heard you and we've listened to your feedback and we're not comfortable setting 7.5 to referendum. We want to try a different number, right? That would be the give and take there.
Can I ask a question about that, Matt? If that is what the board decided to do tonight, are we kind of back to square one in terms of the timeline? Do we have to, have another meeting where we authorize, go back, put everything in the paper again? And so, and if that's the case, I just think we need to consider what this does to the timeline.
Mhm.
And also, I guess my other question is, I don't know if you're the best one to answer this matter or if it's Kim or somebody else. If we go at the 7.5 and if the voters approve that, is the board obligated to spend all of that? Or could they still only focus on the 1 and the 2 items and leave it there?
Yeah, so the first question is if and again, I apologize, I would want to go on Westlaw and the last thing I want to do is sit here for an hour and look at it. And I'd like to talk to some of the education folks. I've never attended a regional school district meeting where it got amended subsequent. And so I don't know if there's a case law. And as you know, people pay attention and someone might raise this issue if we were to reduce it by, a substantial amount. If you had to re-go through the process, yes, you would have a special board meeting. You would reschedule the district meeting. It would have to get published in the newspaper by at least 5 days notice. You would have exactly what you had today, your district meeting. Then you'd have another special meeting. The real time crunch is the statute requires 30 days notice to the towns about the referendum. So again, unlike in municipal referendums where it's 7 and 14 days after the town meeting, there's a 30-day requirement in the regional school district statute. So that's what takes a little bit of time. So you'd probably, right now, your referendum is February 8th. You're probably back to March 8th, theoretically, something like that. You're probably backed up another month. Yeah, all the referendum, all the bond resolution says right now is it's not, you're appropriating the full amount and you're authorizing bonds, to finance that, but you're not obligated to spend the entire appropriation. If you look at section 1, and I know I apologize, these bond resolutions are pretty dry, but if you look at towards the end, there's a sentence there that says, the building committee is authorized to determine the particulars of the project and may reduce or modify the scope of the project as desirable, and the entire appropriation may be spent on the project as so reduced or modified. But they have the ability to go under. So what would happen is, in that context, if let's say you did only 4.5 million, and that was the decision, we would never let you bond $7.5 million, right? Bond counsel would step in and say, no, we're not going to overissue. So what we would probably make you do is issue notes on a short-term basis to figure out how much you actually need in debt to pay for the project and slow everything down. So if you reduced it, if you spent less money, your bond authorization or your note issuance would mirror that, right? You would never go issue the debt and then back into a number. It'd be the other way around, if that makes sense.
But the referendum would still have to be for the 7.5.
If that's what you want to spend, yes.
Well, unless we change it and then go through this whole process all over again.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is if you change it and amend it, and I'm using a number someone threw out of 5 million or something like that. I don't know if that complies with the statute. And if the statute is that once you have the district meeting and you have the public hearing, you're then sending to referendum, or if you have the right to go and amend that amount. I can't answer off the top of my head, and I do apologize for that.
Mike?
It's Bob. Lucy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think we heard anybody say to lower it to 1 and 2. People just objected to the total amount. So I'm not sure lowering it has an effect, a positive or negative, on the outcome. I think Lindsay asked me what I would like. I would like to go with 1 and 2, but I'm not sure that going to 7.5 million and changing it is going to make a big difference. And
oh, we lost you again, Bob. Bob, we lost that last part of your statement.
Mostly people were just objecting to it.
Can I ask a question? I'm not sure if this is Matt that would answer this, or if there's someone else, or maybe it's just something that I need to be finding someone else, if it's a separate conversation. But just thinking ahead and hearing what we're all saying, and what we know, we didn't even want to be in this position where we were trying to figure out how to keep the school running, because that wasn't the main focus of this board. What are our alternatives? I mean, even if it sounds like, 7.5 isn't going to pass, and even probably 5.5 isn't going to pass. And most people, if you ask them, they want to put 0 into it. So, and, as a board of ed and trying to put kids in there because that's our only choice now, what are our options?
I know I've talked to the superintendent about that. You guys it's an unfortunate situation if neither passes, right? Because it's sort of an inconsistent argument in some ways, right? You can't close it, you can't renovate it. I don't know. I really don't have an answer other than you would have to maybe continue to try to put something forward, either through a plan amendment or a bond referendum that could pass and get support. I acknowledge it's a very difficult thing. And, what's also interesting, of course, is, it's different thresholds, right? The plan amendment requires both towns to support it. This is a majority vote. The statutes were made a long time ago, probably in a different era. And it's a difficult process for regional school districts to operate in this, in this day and age. So I don't have an easy answer for you. I apologize. Probably just continue to try, I guess, would be the best way to describe it.
My concern with going with the 7.5 is that it will not pass. And then we have to start the process all over. If we lower it, we have to start the process all over. And if that doesn't pass, we're still not having anything done to the school. We talked about some of the issues that need to be done, especially the urgent issues, priority one issues that, and you know, I'll kind of echo Bob Yamartino. We need to make some improvements to this school because it is going to be open at least for the near future. We don't know for how long, you know, perhaps as I read Mrs. Morganti's email, maybe it's not such a bad idea to just take care of just the urgent issues as part of the budget without even going to any kind of referendum, any kind of bonding. We have approximately $300,000 of urgent improvements that need to be made. We might pull a few priority twos in there if we need to, and just put it in as part of the budget. At least we can address those issues before we find out we're in a 911 situation with the school and we have to figure out what to do with the children. In the meantime, it would buy us some time to see what happens with the enrollment, and perhaps sometime in the future, we might be able to come up with a different type of configuration that would pass in both towns and still be able to close the school in the future. Those are my thoughts.
My only concern about doing that, Lucy, is that we'd be adding to the budget. We'd have a harder time even trying to cut anything if we put that through that way. I have a question on numbers if Kim is on. If we go back, if we go to the facility study, Kim.
Lindsay, Kim just stepped off. She's out of town, and she said if something urgent comes up, I can text her, but she's off the Zoom right now.
Okay. Well, maybe we can figure it out. Page 21, if I look at it correctly, it looks like we're not including the soft costs.
We're not including what kind of costs?
The soft costs versus the construction costs.
Oh, you're talking about where they've added the extra, where it's up to 9 million?
Well, when I add up, it just doesn't look like they're included. When I add it up, the blue adds up to 6.6. And the red actually brings the total over 7.5 million, including the soft costs. So maybe we could ask him that.
I did. I asked her about what percentage we would add to the bond amount if we were changing it at all. And she said 15% should be sufficient to cover those, the concerns that you have.
Okay.
Michelle's on the line. You did the analysis, Michelle.
Yes, I can speak to that. So typically when we do these facility conditions, these are just line items. And then when a project comes forward, all these kind of components aren't on top of that. So we're just showing you realistically what could happen. But at the same time, you guys are going to get some reimbursement. So I still feel like that 7.5 is a pretty safe number. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually what I'm talking about, though. It's actually the engineering soft costs, unless I'm reading it wrong.
So the soft costs would apply to, yes, A&E fees, testing, all sorts of other components that go into the project, not just those line items pieces. So we put escalation in there. So that's what the green was kind of showing you over the years. That's going to build up a little bit. So we're just trying to put a little more of a realistic approach there. So yes, it kind of brings that up to a 9 million. And I apologize that last meeting I was at, we hadn't done that part yet. So I didn't, bring that up at the time. Yeah. But the 7.5, you're going to get some state reimbursement on a lot of that too. So I still think the 7.5 would still be fine.
Is that guaranteed, the state reimbursement?
No, I mean, some of these projects would pass. I can't guarantee you anything through the state process. But a lot of these are typical items that go through the process. What I couldn't pinpoint is your exact reimbursement. Right now, Region 13 has a 52.86% for this year, but it will be downgraded based on the enrollment of the school. And that's the kind of component we don't know yet to really hone in on what that is. So once some demographics are done and you guys kind of know, is it a K4 or what, you can really kind of hone in on what we really anticipate that reimbursement being.
Okay.
Missy, you had your hands up?
My issue be going down. And I don't know if that's off the table tonight, depending on if we had to do a district meeting, but those additional architectural soft costs actually put us up over the 7.5. So without discussing adding to just the ones and the twos, we do have to add that in because that should be part of the total bond.
Yes, and I think that's what that 15% Lucy or Kim had mentioned earlier was to cover. And some of these items, all of this might not necessarily go in one project, and not all of it has to be designed and engineered. Certain pieces could be a separate project. I don't know. So it's a kind of rough number to put on everything right now. That's why we went with the 20. We were kind of mentioning the 20 to 30. It could be less. Again, these are kind of all rough planning numbers. So it's hard to pinpoint that exact number.
Any other thoughts? Missy?
Yeah, I had someone ask me in the parking lot, why can't we go back and ask to close the school again? And I said, well, in my opinion, we've already asked twice in two different ways. And then, at the first part of the the district meeting, someone had asked, well, why didn't it say on the referendum question, if you don't let us close the school, why didn't we put the 7 or I think at that point it was 6.2. Why didn't we put that on? I believe, Matt, if you could answer this, we were not allowed to do that, correct?
Yeah, there's two reasons for it. One is, right, you can't have one referendum question where it says, shall the plan amendment be, the plan amendment be amended, right, or modified to close John Lyman? And if no, we have to authorize bonds, right? So you can't phrase one question like that because the statute requires it to be shall, ? Yes, no. Pretty simple. So you can't have two variables. The other problem is, and there's two other issues with it. Number one, if you had two questions, which you can't, you're not sure, both may pass or both may fail. There's no guarantee you get one or the other if you don't combine them, and you can't combine them. The real reason you can't do it, it's different votes. Remember what I said about how a bond issuance passes with a majority vote of those who voted the referendum versus a plan amendment, you need a majority in both towns. So it's different percentages of the same question. And that came up a lot a couple of years ago. I remember when Bob, people asked that a bunch of times. That's why you can't do it. Title 10 has different requirements for how you pass a plan amendment versus a bond issuance.
And Missy too.
Right. And I think it was just important for that to become part of the minutes today. Yep. And hopefully people are still listening, because people keep saying, well, maybe if Middlefield knew it was going to cost this much, they would have voted differently. Best to get the numbers as what they were, but I'm not sure that it would have.
And to make it also that that question specifically came up several times. I remember asking that myself as a board member, could we just make that known? And so again, it goes back to, if people are listening, then that came up several times in conversation.
Right, which is why
I know it sounds crazy, but you really could have two questions on the same ballot. We've seen this with charter revision, and they both pass. You could have the closing pass and the bond issuance pass, and then you go, well, what is right? How on earth would you interpret that? So.
See, can I say something?
Yes, please.
Kind of based on what I've heard and goes directly back to Missy's last comment. So again, I can't say I've only been here less than a year, because that's not true anymore. But it is true that since the time I even took this job, this has been the hot topic of conversation with everyone I talk to in the community. And I guess from where I sit, what I have heard is that for years and years and years, we thought we were going to close this school. And so we didn't do anything. And we've now asked the voters twice for permission to close, and they said no. We haven't asked them if they are willing to invest what needs to be invested to keep this school open with what Michelle texted me earlier, for 20 years. And so from where I sit, if we're going to be there for 20 years, the difference between parsing out 5.5 and 7.5, which we may not even spend at this point, is not really the question in front of us. The question in front of us is, does this community want to invest substantial monies in John Lyman? I think we all think the answer is going to be no. And we may be right. I still think we need to ask that question, and I think we need to get that answer as soon as possible. If the answer is yes, we can start making these repairs and do what we're going to do around that. And if the answer is no, we'll move on to whatever we think we have to explore next. And again, I don't think any of us want to speculate about that, but my personal opinion is nobody could have ever dreamed up this scenario where a Board of Education would have its hands tied about closing a school and also have the inability to repair it and maintain it. And so I do feel like we will be in a different position to address this issue if we get this question answered. And that's why I think we ought to put it forward to February 8th and get that question answered. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Because we do have a motion.
I think I would agree with Doug that the difference, when you look at items 1 and 2 and look at the soft costs and engineering costs, $7.5 million is probably going to be pretty close to what it's going to cost to do those items anyway. I think we should move ahead.
Okay. Anyone else?
I was going to say, I tend to agree. I mean, $2 million is a lot of money, but when it's broken over, the debt service for that many years, and with our other debt starting to fall off, my concern is that if we don't do most, if not all of it, that then we're going to be back in this position in a couple of years, when the number 3s become the number 1s.
Right.
So
I agree. I'm a little concerned about inflation. Going back to a referendum for another bonding.
My preference is just what's absolutely mostly needed to keep the school functioning at this point, but I agree with what Doug's saying. I just think no matter what we do, we're going to be back at the drawing board, so we might as well just get the ball moving again. We thought we were past COVID. We'll see how much more we can get the ball rolling at this point.
Okay, any other thoughts? Any other thoughts before we take a vote on the
I just wanted to throw it out there just because we have a lot of new members. Just once we vote on the referendum, we can no longer use our district funds to advocate for this. So we can only provide factual information. That doesn't mean individually we can't tell people our feelings, but as a Board of Education, we can no longer use district funds. Correct, Matt?
That is correct. And it's for or against, right? There are exceptions to that. So if you have individual questions, right? People often ask, what about my Facebook page? That's your personal page, right? But you can't use your Board of Ed email address. You couldn't use the photocopier at the district office to make a flyer. Those things you have to be careful about. But I'm sure there'll be some specific questions and you can just send them to Doug or whatever, and I can certainly answer them.
Okay, thank you, Missy. Okay, we have a motion before us for a resolution to appropriate $7.5 million for renovations and improvements to John Lyman Elementary School, and to authorize the issuance of bonds, notes, or temporary notes in an amount not to exceed $7.5 million to finance the appropriation. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand so we can see.
Aye.
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 Do you want to do a roll call just because we're on Zoom?
We could. That probably would be better because yes. Okay. So let's start. Missy.
Aye.
Bob.
Aye.
Jamie. Jamie?
You raised his
Oh,
hand.
you're muted.
Aye.
Thank you. John?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
Amanda? Okay, you're muted, Amanda.
Aye.
And Jason?
Aye.
And Lucy? Aye. Lindsay?
Aye.
Okay. Looks like it's unanimous. Okay. The second part of this is to have a motion for a resolution to submit to referendum the resolution to appropriate $7.5 million for renovations and improvements to John Lyman Elementary School, and to authorize the issuance of bonds, notes, or temporary notes in an amount not to exceed $7.5 million to finance the appropriation. I need a motion for that.
So moved.
Lindsay moved and seconded by Bob Moore. Okay. Any discussion?
I do have a discussion, Matt. Will you write an explanatory and a note on explaining what the referendum is about?
I didn't catch any of that.
I think Bob was asking Matt if he would be willing to write explanatory text and note to explain all this. Is that right, Bob?
Yes.
Yeah, so the question was, will the district prepare explanatory text, Doug?
I think so. I've only heard bits and pieces of what he said, but I think
Yeah, the explanatory text was authorized in the resolution you just did in section 8. And so, yeah, so that is something that can go on the district website. It could be distributed to people in both towns. It's going to be neutral. We can help prepare and approve it to make sure it's scrubbed and doesn't advocate for or against, and we can work with whomever from the board to prepare that. Yep. Adjectives are bad, facts are good. That's the line that we use, so.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, all those in favor of the resolution to submit to referendum? Let's go through one at a time like we did before. I'll start with Missy.
Aye.
Bob Moore. We didn't hear you, Bob. Bob said aye. Jamie?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maura?
Aye.
Amanda?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Lindsay?
Aye.
Lucy? Aye. Okay, it passes. Okay, item number 7 is another opportunity for public comment. At the end of the meeting, this can refer to items that are on the agenda or any other topic. Ken?
We have 2 people with their
So
hand
are
raised.
Are we answering questions again, or is this a strict public comment like usual?
Just strictly public comment.
Okay, strictly public comment, 3 minutes.
Okay, the first caller will be, the phone number ends in 8255. Please state your name and town.
Hi there, it's Bruce Eidinger from Middlefield again. So it sounds to me like people are having a hard time kind of understanding the scope of the spend, or at least I know I am, but it sounded like that from a couple other callers. So I think a couple of things, if we could communicate out to people, maybe a per capita estimate of what this 7.5 million actually looks like per person in the 2 towns. I know that's not an entirely accurate representation of the true cost per family, we'll say, but just to give a sense of scale to people, what that actually means financially might be helpful for people to wrap their heads around this a little bit more wholeheartedly. And then additionally, I think one other thing that keeps getting overlooked, at least in tonight's conversations, both in person and on this phone, or on the Zoom, is that no matter what, something was going to need to be spent to accommodate these kids. And I think everybody's seeing the dollar signs of $7.5 million, which is obviously a big number no matter which way you cut it. But maybe neglecting the fact that even if we don't spend the $7.5 million on linemen, we're going to have to spend a certain amount to put those kids. We would have had to spend a similar amount, less albeit, to put kids in Brewster. And I don't believe from the last study that was published a couple months ago that was an insignificant amount of money either. So continuing to remind people that they'd be paying money regardless, and that this is an incremental spend, not an all or nothing, might help to, I'm not going to say win over hearts and minds, but at least help people digest it. That's something that we could do, or that the board could do, in terms of kind of communication and advertising.
We certainly will take your comments into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We had someone else, Ken?
The next caller, phone number ends in 2849. Please state your name and town before speaking. Wait, 49, you are just unmuted themselves.
Yeah, this is Jennifer Tomer from Durham again. And I just had a question earlier, but you kind of basically answered it on going off of, John's comment of this being a hard sell. My question was, if they don't pass, was what the next step was. So I think if that could be made clear to everyone also, that would be beneficial.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes. The next caller, the last four ends in 4039. Please state your name and town before speaking.
Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Ryan Walsh. I'm from Middlefield, Connecticut. I just wanted to say a nice job by the board getting to this point. And I want to echo Bruce's comment up front. And I'm just going to add a couple things. I think going after the ones and the twos makes a lot of sense. And trying to distill that into what taxpayers would pay year over year, if there's a way to put some examples in where we would start with the ones maybe in year one and the twos in year two and the threes in year three, where we can take and at least try to graduate the cost over the years, it might make it a bit more attractive to residents in both towns, rather than having a $7.5 million number in the referendum. If there's a way to use some examples to project the cost out with some of the strategies that were discussed in this meeting, which I support, I think that would also be helpful to the voters. Thanks.
Thank you.
There is no one else with their hand raised at this time.
Okay, we are on item number 8, adjournment. Thank you so much for hanging in there for this long and for all your comments. And Ken, thanks for all that you have done with your department, for all the IT. And we'll have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
And second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion, the meeting is adjourned, and seriously, thank you all so much.